really what I thought would do today is talk a little bit about the Bravo MCP, which is a thing we've been working on in an effort to try and really flesh out some of the ideas we've been building in our core design about putting the product into the conversation. Context for the viewers, Bravo Studio is a platform that allows people to build apps from Figma designs. Now, obviously, these days with development, there's a lot of development tools out there, but we thought it'd be a useful exercise in trying to see, taking some of those ideas and putting the product into the MCP conversation to see how that could change things. And we built what we call Bravo MCP, which helps to do that. And from that, there was a few things that came out that were quite interesting. So what I might do, if it's okay with everybody, I'm just going to share my screen and sort of show the process of what we've built and talk a little bit about some of the things that we saw in this. Let me do that. Can you see my screen okay?
Yep.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
So what we try to do is really try and look at the sort of flows of what happened inside the Bravo application and then put it into an MCP. And actually, in the process of doing this, we did a couple of interesting things. Like one of the first things we did was actually invert it. So now, what I mean by that is that all of the model work is done in the client, and all of the sort of more standard sort of compute work is done in the MCP. And what that means is that there's the advantage of this approach is that you don't have to spend you have to buy tokens twice. You can use your subscriptions to do the AI work, which is, I haven't seen a lot of people do this approach, but I think it's actually a really useful one to enable you to really leverage that multiple that you get in your subscription rather than having to buy the same tokens twice from different suppliers. Anyway, so what we did, if we just, what I can do is I'll show I should be able to go and look at the tools and show them here so you can see all the tools we've got in this. So if we go to Bravo MCP, you can see there's a ton of tools. Yeah.
For everyone to be on the same page, so the idea, correct me if I'm wrong, today Bravo Studio, what it does is it's a platform where it has like the usual dashboard like interface and there you can manage your apps, right? So you bring in a Figma file and then from there you build your app, right? So
yeah,
your native app. So now what you're doing with Bravo MCP is basically putting that whole product that is Bravo Studio inside the chat, inside Claude or ChatGPT, and then you manage everything from there. So you don't need to go to the platform itself, to the website.
Yeah, and I think the advantage. So I mean, there were a few challenges that Bravo always had around connecting to backends and some real-time updates, but also, in many platforms, I think also have some of this. It's hard for people to get the hang of the user interface to know what's going on. But by actually putting the whole product inside the LLM, the LLM's always there, available to help you solve issues or figure stuff out, which it isn't normally available in a normal product. What most people are doing at the moment is they're kind of providing an MCP to connect to their product to help with a couple of features. But we've really flipped it around. We've basically just put all the functionality as a series of tools into the Bravo MCP so that the LLM can really do everything it needs to do. And now, obviously, there are challenges with this in that by putting a lot of tools in here, there's a lot of stuff that goes into the context when you start using the MCP. But I think that a lot of the clients now, like Claude, actually have now they only pull in the tooling or the context of the tools as necessary. So some of the issue goes away, but you get all sorts of really nice sort of features that come from this. So, for example, we've built a report issue tool so that if any steps fail, the LM could automatically submit a failure report, including all the context of what it was working on as it does it. So, all this sort of stuff that you'd have to think about doing separately, it could automatically do. And the other thing is the entire workflow can run as an agent so that you can basically create a sub-agent to do the entire flow. And so I could actually run multiple of these at the same time as sub-agents, which, so all this functionality comes for free by putting it into the sort of leading edge frontier models clients, because it will develop these amazing features, and we don't have to do it ourselves because we can piggyback off what's going on. And because we're not using the API calls, we're using the interactive LLM session. We don't have this issue about having to costing an absolute fortune, so we can do a ton of LLM work without really having a massive impact on our token budget. So there's a lot of cool things come from this. So anyway, we've built a bunch of features, a bunch of tool calls that kind of that do all the operations of the application itself. And so if I just go back to sorry, a second. Let me just get rid of this. Okay, so let me just kick it off. So if we start a new SaaS session, first of all, we've got the sort of standard things you have in a SaaS tool. What have I got already? So just making sure I'm calling the right thing. So we have a standard kind of, a status update, sort of widget telling me what I've got. And again, this is really nice because we can actually use the widgets to help us give us a lot more information, have a lot more control. So I can open the app that's been built, I can rename them, delete them, and actually, just to explain the process, what Bravo MCP does is it takes a Figma design using the tagging system that Bravo had before. It builds the design screens in React Native. It then will also work out, make a best guess assumptions as to what sort of behaviors you want to have on there based on what the tags are. It will then build a backend using Convex, which is a real-time backend that then delivers that data, and then does a build of that, and it then generates that as a GitHub repo, which you can then download. So it can go, and actually, also, if you wanted to do, it will actually build you a native React Native Android version, which you can download. So it can actually do all of that end to end without having to do any involvement at all. So that's kind of all the steps. And here you can see the download of the GitHub repo. But if I say now, just to show you, to give you an example of how it looks, I'm just going to grab an app, and let's say, okay, can you build me an app from this Figma file? Oops, sorry, my bad. A little bit too keen there.
What's really interesting by looking at this right now is you're asking, you just want to check how many apps you have, right? And which are they? So, and what's the status? So this is like the status update.
Yeah.
In the old world, you would go to the website, you would like do the login, look for your dashboard, look for these apps wherever they are, and try to look for the right data that you want to check. And here's like what we are saying is the benefit of having it in an MCP app is that you're like, okay, give me the apps, and then it will be fetched for you and shown to you just the relevant stuff that you want to know. So this is,
Yeah,
I mean, a
yeah.
perfect example of what we've been discussing so far around the great UX
Right,
of
the intent. It's
MCP
true.
apps, right?
And also, what's quite nice about this is, we can start using graphical things. So this is pulling in the icon that's in the Figma file that's been defined for the application that's used when it does the native build. So you can really start to use the visual side of things by using the widgets. So let's build a fresh duplicate.
Yeah.
And what it will do now is, I think it normally tries to use Bravo. It tries to connect to Figma MCP, ask the client to look at Figma MCP to get the data. Actually, no, gets my friends first. So it gets the list of the screens first. And then, let me just see. So it gets the design context. So basically it gets the sort of information it needs to build the screen. So it pulls the screenshot in from the Figma's REST endpoint, and then it also gets the design context from the Figma definition on the REST interface as well. And then it basically builds what it thinks is the best approximation of it. So this is the screenshot that is pulled in. And now it writes the code for it. based on the sort of functionality it's seen. And again, this is augmented with the Bravo tags, so you can kind of give it some annotations as to what you want it to do. So really leveraging that sort of Bravo side. But the important point is it's capturing all the colors and the fonts, so it's getting all the sort of design tokens that it needs for each of the different screens. And once it's created the screen file.
Sorry, Toby, can I quickly ask, is this the old Bravo was all about, adding tags into the
Yeah.
Figma, right? In order to make the hooks that go between the screens and the app. Is that something that is this creating those tags in the Figma? Like, is it just reading from the Figma
So
or modifying Figma?
no, it's not. So the first part of this was very much to help existing Bravo users. So what happens is
Sure.
we're just basically taking the existing tags. I have actually built a separate Bravoizer MCP server which creates the tags, because what I was finding was that actually the sort of Bravo approach of having a design with annotations is quite a good starting point for things for some situations. So but I'm also looking, the other thing I'm also looking at doing, because obviously a lot of people don't have Figma and don't have things pre-tagged, is to build something that takes an input from just a set of screens. So that and other tools other than Figma, because obviously that's just one interface in, and we could do this in multiple ways. So at this stage, I'm just doing the Figma with existing Bravo tags, but actually it's a pretty small jump because I've got the power of the LLM to help me, think about how we approach the design to pull in things for other systems, which is really the next step for us, is to say, okay, let's make this a bit more useful for more people. And then it can then part into the same sort of build flow.
Got it. So from a marketing point of view, you're looking at this as a starting point of, you're trying to make you're trying to help accelerate the existing customers, right? And then like you say, the Bravoizer is where it becomes more of a new market
Yeah, I mean,
type customer
in this
acquisition
world,
strategy.
as I think often people say, it's all about distribution. And the market that we have right
Hmm.
now, or the market Bravo has, is about Figma. So it's really trying to help that existing group get into the AI world and use build things in a more agentic way and help them move faster. But and then
Yeah,
we can then leverage that to open it up to more users, because a lot of the tools
sure.
work in lots of different places.
Is there a Figma MCP app as well as the Bravo one?
There is. You mean well, Figma have made a Figma MCP? You mean?
Yeah. Well, and the reason I'm asking the question is, I'm imagining a very compelling demo of being able to both see Bravo, but also be able to see stuff from Figma, which allows you to show the compositional story, right? Because right now you're showing a story that is directly between, say, Chat or Claude in this case, and the and Bravo, right? And I think there's also a really interesting story of being able to how show. I mean, we haven't really seen other people do this demo yet, so I appreciate it's a little bit out there. But like showing how your MCP app works with somebody else's MCP app,
Yes. I mean, there
right?
is
And
some
how they
challenges
connect.
there. And again, some of the things that I've learned as we've gone through this process, like
Sure.
OpenAI doesn't let you have two MCPs working together when one's in development mode. It will actually, so if I try and have a Figma MCP working with this, it actually removes Bravo MCP from from the session, which is a bit annoying. So Claude doesn't do that.
Fascinating. Thank you.
Uh,
Yeah.
but yes, I mean, I think that's really, we've actually, I haven't, there's some really nice things we've actually built into this. Like we do, it does diffs. So basically you can say sync my Figma design, and you can make a small change in Figma. You can just update and then say sync my design. It'll pull that, it'll diff the Figma that's been captured and what's changed, and only update that change. And the other thing that's quite nice about this is that the way that the screens are built, all the screens are built individually, and so I can within a few seconds, if I make a change, I can actually have a visualization of what that change is going to be before the whole build happens. So trying to replicate some of the nice things about Bravo within the MCP. And that's the idea of this QR code you can see on the screen. The idea is that every screen is built, you can see what it's looking like. It's not quite perfect because obviously until it's built,
Cool.
all
Thank
of
you,
the
man.
functionality is not in there. But it's there are some nice things we can do, by using this approach. Let me just see how far it's got. So just go back to this. So it's built that screen, then it went to the next screen. And just so you know, this is a very simple to-do app, just with like an ad and a to-do list screen. So it's built that screen. There's a loading component it's built. This is quite interesting. So what happens often, and you can see this obviously when you build with AI as well, it'll make small mistakes, and often it depends on where you catch them. So into the build of this, we put a lot of rules in to make sure it's consistent as a build. So often it generally catches its own mistakes pretty early. So it will try and build something. Okay, let's do it again. And it resubmits. It's fine. It's deploying, and right now it's deploying. And this is another actually useful part of using widgets. Actually, one of the challenges with trying to use MCP is it doesn't, just straightforward MCP doesn't really have a concept of time very easily. So it's difficult to know how things are going. But by using widgets, we can do as you've seen the change there, you can use this sort of real-time WebSocket updates. So you can actually have things running in the background and then update when they're complete. And so here we've got the fact that we've got the app completed now while we're talking. And so let me just put this into the window so you can see it working.
While you do that, I think what Ray mentioned is very important. Is what we keep getting back to, right? Like it's the collaboration of different MCP apps within the same context, and I can see this as a very useful window where I, as a developer, can go and use Bravo MCP to like create my app, orchestrate everything from Claude, let's say, and then I can spar with I don't know, maybe I have documentation about my app, my company, whatever it is, my business logic in Notion. So then I call uh, the Notion MCP app, and I have it like update whatever documentation is in there, or fetch whatever documentation I need to inform my app development. I can use Scalidraw for like quickly
Yeah,
viewing my backend, like things like this. So I think that
Yeah,
becomes like a whole different conversation.
That's a great point. I mean, there's all sorts of crazy, because you've got full access to all of the sort of internals of what your app. You can say, hey, give me the schema of. Can you explain the schema of this, or how all the pages are routed together? It can give you. It can connect to other MCPs and pull that information out. So just to finish off on this, this is the app running now. So I mean, it's very simple. Plus new task. And then it goes in, and it's all using real time, so it's pretty quick to work. And all of this logic has been generated from just a combination of the tags and the LLM figuring things out. So, I mean, obviously this is a very simple exercise, but it works surprisingly well, even for larger projects. And I think the other thing that's really nice about this is it's super extensible. If I just go back to the MCP a second. So we've added in this concept of what we call recipes, so that you can extend it, because obviously one of the challenges with any kind of application is you often want to use SDKs and things that go beyond what the standard builds are. And so we can add this ability to have recipes to be able to extend it to do whatever you want. Basically, the idea is you can create these extensions, and so I can actually manage the data within the usually within the MCP, I can change some data. So, I mean, again, you wouldn't want this necessarily for something that's fully in production, but for prototyping and playing around without having to delve into different things, it's really useful. And it works for all the different apps. And we can extend all the recipes to do author. And one of the things we're also looking at doing is being able to add in other backends other than Convex. So you can just basically apply it, give the LLM a list of all of the endpoints, and help it connect up to the application so that you can work it with anything that's already existing as well.
Toby, one question.
So,
I think that the recipes are very interesting, and if we correct me if I'm wrong, but if we try to go to the old Bravo world, today you have your app that you build on Bravo, and then you can add different integrations, right? Like Bravo does it for
Yeah.
you. Like you can add these SDKs,
Well, I mean,
but
I
just
think for me, the interesting thing is kind of like the meta thing on this, which is that, I mean, we're basically, what we're trying to do is get them the LLM model to LLM to basically help figure out some of these connection pieces, you know, to try to do a lot of the donkey work that would be, you know, one of the challenges of Bravo before is you had to kind of map your back end to your design. And actually, the LM's really good at that. And what I'm really trying to do here in this instance is you get the LM to help do that process. You know, it's pretty good at figuring these things out. It's probably not going to be 100% perfect, but it'll be a lot faster than it would be someone doing it manually. And I think there's a lot of opportunities for that kind of thing to go on. But to really make that happen, you've got to expose your application or the key parts of your application to through the MCP. There's obviously security implications doing this. You know, you can't give access to everything. You have to be careful about what you know, what you do. But by moving the model or opening your application to that, it gives you the power to be able to not only expose more functionality, get the model to be able to help you do more of this sort of boring work or make things faster, but also, as you're saying, JC, connect up more MCP servers that can even do more things.
pretty cool, pretty cool. So what we are looking at here in the within the recipes widget, these
Yeah.
are integrations that you have enabled for the Bravo MCP, right?
These are the ones we've built so far. But I mean, actually building a recipe is pretty straightforward. It's really just a case of saying what configuration you need, you know, what libraries it needs to add and what implications it has, so what dependencies are. So it's relatively light in terms of what you have to do. It's, again, just giving the model the raw materials to do the building. So then it lets it go and figure out how to plug everything in. And yeah, the great
So
thing is once it's built, sorry.
I could go and create new recipes myself, or that would be
Not at
getting
this
out of
stage.
the.
No, I mean, this exercise was really, you know, it's just something we want to try and give out to the users to see how they use it. There's a lot of different directions we could take with it, but you know, for me, there's two there's the two dimensions to this. One is helping Bravo, but the second one is that kind of meta idea of, you know, the things you learn when you go through this process, and you know, being able to be able to really push the model into the product opens up all sorts of things. And you know, you start seeing ideas that come up and like ways of testing it. You know, I'm able to because, you know, when I want to test this, I connect the model to the SDI, the local version, and I can get it to run multiple times as a sub agent. When it then checks the output that's coming back and it's seeing, so I can do, I can go through multiple cycles really fast, or within using my subscription tokens, which is super cool and super cheap. So, you know, there's lots of really nice things that sort of you start to see when you play around with this approach.
And I have a question. So, what are you mentioned the things that you've learned, or it's a useful exercise to learn about this whole process of putting your product into an MCP app. So, what are the main challenges or things that broke that you've seen while doing this?
Um, what things that broke? I think the big concern I have with all this is security. I think making sure you're not doing something that affects it for all your users. The things that broke. I mean, the great thing is that most of this, the LLM is really helpful to fix things that broke. I mean, lots of stuff broke as I did this. And sometimes the models are telling me, suggesting things which didn't make any sense. Yeah, the usual kind of stuff that you kind of see when you build with these things. But I don't think there was anything that was super broken with it. I mean, it was. I think the biggest challenge I had was actually not going crazy with it and not trying to go, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. It's more of, you know, trying to be focused and make sure I'm building something that's actually useful. Because, you know, when you have the LLM right in amongst it, you can go off in all sorts of different directions.
Right. This is really cool. So are we getting like a sneak peek into the future of Bravo?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I mean, I think the thing for me is to really is to try and give it out to our users and see if this is useful for them, to see if it's interesting. I mean, if you take a step back and go, what was the original promise of Bravo? It was to try and make it easier to build. That kind of is what we're trying to do here. But there is questions because, a lot of people get super annoyed with Figma's rate limits, right? So we're limiting people to have to force them to Figma. And also, we're giving them an Android test build and a download. Is that what they really want? Do we actually want to do they just want an app at the end of it? And do they want to stay within this? Is this can they do what they need to do with this? Because I mean, I can change things. I mean, I could go back and say, hey, look, I mean, I just as you could with Claude, I could do any of the design changes here. But do they want to stick? Do they want to really keep that to Figma and just do logic changes here? There's lots of things we need to think about if we look at this as a product. But I think, the really next step is really trying to get it out to people to see, if it's resonating and where the pain points are with people, where they want to see it next, what we do with that. But I think the other part of this is to say, look, there's a lot. I'm going to try and write down some of the learnings because I think there's a really good exercise in applying this to other products to say, look, think about taking your main flows apart. There's lots of things we've done that are really interesting. Like, for example, the way it works is each step responds with the next step of what the LLM needs to do, so it's able to carry on. It doesn't start with a massive set of instructions at the beginning because that kills the context, and for a lot of things, it's irrelevant. So what happens is it feeds the content. So when you start a process, it does one exercise, and then at the end of that, my MCP returns with, okay, now as a model, you can do this or this, and these are the instructions for it. So you're getting progressive disclosure of the context additions that you need to have. And there's lots of learnings like that we did during this process that I think would be useful in other tools as they look at doing MCP. But for my mind, MCP is super underrated for this. Being able to look at how provide a service with security built in, where you control a flow, where you're getting the LLM to do the work, and being able to provide back feedback, visual feedback with widgets, it's really valuable for people providing services. Obviously, it's not as flexible as CLI, it's not as token efficient as CLI, but if you want to provide almost a harness as a service like this, then it's super interesting.
Definitely.
So anyway, that was the things I wanted to show off today. So we'll see how that goes. We're from how it's received and if people want us to do more with it.
Really cool.
Yeah, it sort of shows. Yeah, show some new stuff that can be done with this. And can I ask Toby, like, how? I mean, this is all built on years and years and years of your knowledge of working with Bravo. So someone else creating this whole thing would be quite the lift. But like, what was the work for you of taking what you had been building with Bravo, and sort of the app oriented structure, the web app oriented interface that you've been doing, and making it into an MCP app environment? Like, what kind of investment would other people need to think about for doing that for themselves?
I mean, it's not. I mean, I think if you know your application, it's not hugely significant. I mean, obviously the models do a lot of the heavy lifting. I think that the key part is really having a good idea about how you want to build this. I mean, this is all built, and basically, I promote all this is built on Cloudflare as workers, so I'm not having to do anything. There's not a huge amount of infrastructure I have to deal with, and I think trying to keep it. Well, I mean, it's the usual thing these days. Trying to keep it off. Or keep it on. This sort of using some of these new services that come out is quite helpful because it just saves a lot of the pain of doing, looking after it. But yeah, I mean, it's not. I wouldn't say it's necessarily, to take an existing product and to do something like this isn't necessarily a huge amount of work if you know the pieces you want to do. Obviously, you have to throw a lot of what you've got already away because it doesn't really apply. So, it's really a case of, you know, really thinking about what are the flows you want to do, and what are the outcomes you want to get to. But it's not necessarily a massive amount of work if you've got the right, if you know what you want to try and build.
Super cool. The yeah, this yeah, I can't wait to see the next version of it too.
Cool. Okay. Cool. That's all I had to show off today. So I guess that's well. Let's see what comes up next time.
This is very cool.
Sounds good to me, man. I've actually been working on, MCP apping. First, I was doing that directly with State Change. And so be able to, have people get more direct access to, like, things like the meeting clips and whatever. But also, as I've been getting more into it, making an MCP app just for me to be able to workshop mental models and then get them directly into State Change, right? Uh,
It's really interesting. I think one of the things that I think I can see could be really interesting for a lot of people is this idea of a lot of custom tools on all different platforms. I think what really
yeah,
opens up this sort of idea of completely democratizing this. So obviously, Bravo is about building mobile apps, but being able to build a mobile app for yourself for your very specific needs, I think
yeah,
is actually quite interesting. And I think we're probably going to see more of that, because it's really hard. So much of what happens when you build applications is you end up trying to make them like bigger and bigger markets. You end up really losing what the core sort of skill of what the actual app is by trying to make it encompass lots of different people. And I think there's going to be a really interesting thing for being able to pick very specific things for very specific purposes for people, because the technology to build them is becoming easier and easier. So obviously Bravo is for mobile apps, but as you say, if MCP is a really cool thing for you or a small group of people where you can share it. And the great thing about MCP over the other tooling is that it has the App Store. Getting into the App Store means it's easier to share it to other people and give it some distribution. Not necessarily in a huge market, but it makes it much easier for people to use it. If I was to give people some code, they'll have to install it and set things up. If I give them an MCP, it's one line now. You drop in if it's been on the web, so it's super easy to share it. So yeah, I think there's a lot of, I think MCP is well, maybe there'd be another technology, but I think being able to kind of leverage the LLMs easily and share what you build for yourself or other people, I think it's going to be a really interesting space.
So Ray, is the idea that you have everyone at State Change have a shared MCP app that they can tap into to access knowledge or troubleshoot through their development work, or is that the idea?
yeah. Well, we've had MCP for a while. Like, one of our it's a top tier part of the service is the, people get access, of course, to the events, but then also to the AI mentor that we have, like, just, primarily folks, right? That's chat driven, as you might imagine. But then also an MCP server, right? MCP server and a CLI, the access to the API to provide that, so they can be embedding it directly into their, either chats or their build processes, right? The idea is like a mentor for you and a mentor for your AI,
Mhm.
right? So the AI can just be, getting answer these questions directly. The layer under that now is, particularly for the part where people are using it directly for themselves, or the place where they can see the interface, is adding an MCP apps, or more specifically support for the widget, right? So that they can have widget interfaces showing up much like what you're doing right here, right? As they are asking questions, so they can not just get the text out of it. Well, it seems like this idea or this way of looking at it might be more useful for you, but being able to see the whole brief the way that they could
Nice.
visually, right? If they were accessing the website, but could bring it inside their conversation, so they were able to look at it different ways. And one of the things I found to be really helpful, for conveying these ideas, is to use infographics,
Mm.
right? So they're able to get, you use a two-dimensional view that gives them a better sense of, oh, that's what this idea is about, to go along with the text. And that way, instead of them just having to read a wall of text, they can see that, they can see some of the maxims, some of the pulls, related resources, and then clicking on one of those, navigates you out of the chat, right? Okay, now you want to go through a browsing experience, and you're doing that, in the in Mentor app, through your
Hmm.
browser, right? Not I tried fitting it into the widget like that. That was too much, right? 10 pounds of stuff in a
Yeah.
5 pound bag. Um, that just to have the nice simple interface, have provide context, provide utility inside, and then if you're trying to do something bigger, kick it out. As sort of a principle I'm starting to come around to. Um, but yeah, so the crux of it is, yeah, the MCP has been something we've had for the last few months. But turning into an MCP app with the interact with the visuals, right, for the widget, which allows us to bring the best parts of the mentor app we have into their conversation, so it's provided contextually, is is what I'm currently working on for the members,
Yeah.
right? But then discovering it's not just about that; it's actually helping them develop their own thinking, right? And certainly, I'm starting that by having it develop my thinking. So as I'm getting into other conversations I'm having with the AI, hey, this seems like a useful idea worth keeping. And those ideas, of course, you can store them in your own Notion or what have you. You have that set up, but also how does this link to other ideas that are, helpful in your decision making process, so you can be better making not just a clone, but like the best version of yourself.
And using like some sort of RAG, I mean, how do you do with embeddings? How do you do the searching through the sort of the corpus of your stories?
Yeah, I mean, we have there's a vector
Right.
store, right? So you can go search through that stuff on a free basis. But the other thing I'm finding is that knowledge graphs are super valuable. Idea graphs are even more valuable. And idea graphs actually have many fewer nodes than you might expect. And so the tool calls increasingly are not, hey, let's go do a call to like a graph database or something like doing graph rag type approach. Like let's do vector store and then search across. It's actually, if you know a place to start, you can do something as simple as just using JSON and use more of a wiki type approach, right? Of linking from thing to thing to thing, right? And by having that double click through either as sequential tool calls, or something's happening deterministically inside a single tool call and then providing the context back, can all be pretty handy stuff, right? So trying to think more creatively about how to deal with the knowledge graph in addition to like how you search to find your starting
One
points.
thing, I don't know if you've seen it. There's a company in Barcelona called Carla.ai who are basically building knowledge graphs for LLMs as an MCP. And they've just launched their free version, I think, like last week. Might be, I don't know if you've seen it, but I don't know if they've got any ideas that could be interesting for you. But I think, because they approached it, Alessandra, I think, is the CEO. She basically sold her business to Apple, and she's been about knowledge graphs for ages, and she has she's been tackling similar sorts of problems. So you go on the basis that the connections between things is important, but also I think she's going from the angle of, you want to have verifiable truth as well. You don't want to have like nonsense being into your data. So I think it's an interesting problem. I think they're having.
Right? Yeah, that seems like a neat business. I'll check it
Yeah.
out more.
So, and with your app, do you is there like a feedback in this mechanism as well? So as people use it, I like this is great. I really like this. So you have some way of surfacing really hot content, or is it? I mean, is there any way of you kind of sort of monitoring usage of the content that you find to see which is the ones that people tend to use, or is it more anecdotal in terms of getting a sort of feedback?
Okay, you make a really good point about feedback. So part of it is testing questions are coming in to indicate, well, basically detecting
Yeah.
frustration and happiness as to whether these are, relatively more relevant or less relevant. The other thing I've actually got it doing now, and this is a little bit more behind the scenes, is as the tool calls are firing around, and many of the tool calls are themselves AI powered, right? Which of course means token expense for me, but whatever. The As it discovers challenges, oh wait, this thing is missing, or this thing needs an X, or whatever. Those are just getting logged and turned into issues.
Okay.
That then on a scheduled basis, all right, hey, Claude Code, this is got some they're open issues, go take care of them.
Yeah, that's nice.
So to create a self-healing loop out of it on the back end. I appreciate that's not quite about the front endy part, but it does mean that the more it gets used, the more data gets collected about where it has sharp edges, the more those are just getting, dealt with in a way that does not drive, human labor
Yeah,
unnecessarily, right? Some things, hey, you know what, this requires management. We're going to get this into a branch, but we're going to need to have someone look at this directly, probably me, to make a decision,
yeah,
right? But it can drive, the first 80% show, get the decision, drive the remaining 20%, QA, ship, move
nice.
on. Has been a pretty powerful flow. All because of the point that you're making, which is that the more this the by putting some telemetry into how it gets used, you can be getting more and better ideas, right, about how it should flow. And probably the richest information I have is when people are using the direct state change mentor, right, which is the most expensive from the point of view of the company,
Yeah,
right? Because that's where you're using our tokens, say changes tokens, as opposed to here in, Claude or in ChatGPT, where you're using your own tokens,
yeah,
right, from your subscription. And so if you're going to be using say changes tokens, it takes advantage of the fact so that way it can detect more just at the agent level, right? At the actual, the top level of detecting sentiment, detecting whether or not it was a fit, detecting issues, so that more stuff gets surfaced. So that even so, if they're going to use a more expensive part, we're getting more of the profit back into them of you know uh, more improvements
yeah.
faster.
Very nice. It's pretty cool.
Very cool.
Nice. This is pretty cool. That's so many cool things we can do these days. It always amazes me.
This has been awesome. Let's talk more about this
Yeah,
next
good
week.
stuff. All right. Thanks, guys.